Hi there, it's me, Christopher Spicer. And yes, it's been a long time since you've had a new episode of the movie breakdown. And if you've listened to previous episodes, I've done my apologies, I've made my excuses, I've talked about the ever going whirlwind that is been my life. But oddly enough, Scott and I have recorded some episodes and they've been just sitting there in the can, waiting to be edited and thrown out to the world. And so I apologize for all that. As we've said before the show, and as I will say on this show that you're about to listen to, it's just been a tough past year trying to work on my mental health, trying to basically going out to different medical professionals getting help, but as well get my career on track. I'm still feeling the ramifications of that old thing called COVID, but it seems I'm slowly building back my career, and the plan going forward is to have weekly podcasts again, weekly movie breakdown, and on top of that, get the site going again and having movie reviews and articles over on Beyond the Balcony. This is a summer that I'm hoping for rainbows and skittles and unicorns dancing and prancing, or at least podcasts on a weekly basis. This podcast was recorded all the way back at the beginning of May. It is our summer box office challenge. So the show's going to feel a little dated when it comes to the draft, because we're going to be making some predictions about movies that you already know how they did in the box office. So you get to hear about how wrong we were about stuff like Fall Guy and Furiosa. We got to expose ourselves as maybe not being the experts that we want you to believe sometimes. But I think that it was important, since the summer box office challenge is still happening all summer, that you at least should be able to see the draft. And so we are posting up this episode of the box office challenge draft, summer box office challenge draft. And so I hope you enjoy that. There is a few other shows that have been recorded that have not seen the light of day. My plan is to edit a few of sort of the different movie reviews into sort of one big episode that will hopefully come up this week. We then also have another episode on top of that will hopefully get posted in this coming week. So you will maybe have three episodes to listen to over this week. And then we will return with brand new episodes next week. But for now, it's a few dated episodes. Thank you for your patience. Like I said, lots of crazy stuff going on in my life. But hopefully from now on, you will get regular podcasts. We'll make up for it for 3 this week. And then next week, we'll get back into our regular schedule. So enjoy this episode of the Summer Box Office Challenge Draft.
They're coming to get you, Barbara. They're coming for you, Barbara. Look, there comes one of them now.
Welcome to the movie breakdown. And we've got one of our big annual episodes of the year coming at you. That is right. It is time for the latest Summer Box Office Challenge Draft. But before we get to that, we also have 3 movies that we're reviewing this week, including Alex Garland's latest in Civil War. I'm Christopher Spicer.
And I'm Scott Martin. And before we get into the reviews, this podcast is brought to you by Spreaker Prime and Beyond the Balcony. Spreaker Prime is a great podcast hosting site, and as well, you can support us a lot by listening to this podcast through the Spreaker app, and that'll support us and the fine people at Spreaker. Now, as Christopher mentioned, Civil War, directed by Alex Garland. This is someone we've talked about in the past. He's got quite the history in movie directing and writing. He had written the script for 28 Days Later, and he had written and directed Ex Machina back in 2014. Here Alex Garland is back with A24 doing Civil War. And this is definitely feeling like A24's biggest picture that they've done. This is a movie that is grand scale. It is a big screen picture. This is a movie where the size of the screen, the strength of the audio is going to help tell the tale, help put you into this film. Well, one of the interesting things, or there's a number of interesting things about Civil War. One of them is the perspective of a civil war that is being battled in modern day United States. And that is that the perspective is that of journalists. And I was reading one piece that kind of put it in good perspective, is that in most war movies, we are used to seeing it through the eyes of a soldier carrying a gun, someone who's invested in the fight. And this, the only thing they have is their cameras, and they're there for a different reason. And it makes the experience feel quite fresh, quite riveting, quite scary. The main journalists we follow are Lee, played by Kirsten Dunst. She is a war correspondent who's been around the block. As well, we have Joel, played by Wagner Moura. Jessie, she's young journalist, wants to become a war correspondent. She's played by Kaylee Spaney. They basically are going off on and Sammy, played by Stephen McElhinney. And they're basically set in this world where the United States is in a civil war, and they want the big story from the White House. They're in New York, and they're going to make the dangerous trip to the White House to try to get an interview with the president. One of the things that I love about what Alex Garland did here is there is no expository dialogue at all in this film. We do not know why there's a civil war. We have no clue. There's allusions to the president, ended up taking a third term, which would rile up some people. That's unconstitutional. But you don't know if he did it for the right reasons. Like we were just told that he did. Things could have been crazy, and that could have been the only course of action forward for the country. We didn't know. We know that on the one side is the armies of California and Texas, and that would cause a lot of people to think, why would California and Texas team up? But that's the beauty of this. It doesn't make any sense, but all it tells you is something happened. And two states that are very unlikely to, one that would be, very right wing, one that would be very left wing, they have joined forces. So something big happened, and we're just thrown in the middle of it. We have no clue. And these journalists go out on the road. And the fascinating thing is they come across a few battles and a few situations, and they embed themselves with forces. We don't know if they're with the good guys or the bad guys. We don't know who the good guys and bad guys are. They're with one group of soldiers, or they're with one group of ununiformed fighters in one sequence, and it's easy to think, okay, so these are the good guys. But in the next sequence, they come across a uniformed sniper and his spotter, and all of a sudden, well, are they the good guy? Do both sides have uniforms? Like, is this are they fighting a ragtag group of people, or just other random factions joining in on the fight? Like, what's going on? We don't know. So wherever they go, the war is crazy. There's a line that Kirsten Dunst said in the film about how she was a war correspondent for so many years, so she could send images back to the States as a warning of what war could be, so that people don't experience it for themselves. And here she is stuck in it in her home country. The only time where we're in a situation where we know who the bad guy is a cameo starring Jesse Plemons. It is one of the most chilling scenes I've seen in a movie in a long time. Jesse Plemons came in. He got hired for this role, I think, like 2 days before he filmed it. The person who was supposed to play his character dropped out for whatever reason. His wife, Kirsten Dunst, recommended him. Plemons does what Plemons does and absolutely steals the movie from everyone around him. And the interesting thing is the last 30 minutes of this movie are larger scale wars, is a larger scale war sequence, which is incredibly riveting. You're still following the journalists. They're marching in, they're going in to try to go take the White House to capture the president. We still don't know if this is the right thing morally, but that's who we're with at the time. So they're just trying to get the story. That's all that matters to them, not whose side is who on. I'm left wondering, was that more riveting than the 3 minutes we got with Jesse Plemons? And I don't know. This movie is great in that there's a lot of moments. The movie kicks off, Civil War kicks off with a sequence that essentially tells people, if you came for a rah, let's get a war movie, you've come to the wrong place. It sets the tone immediately. Some flow issues, I wouldn't say pacing issues, but there's maybe a few flow issues that are present in this movie, and I bounce back and forth between, do I give it 3.5 stars? Do I give it 4 stars? Based on the amount of time I've spent thinking about this film, though, I'm going with a full 4 stars. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. This is not a perfect movie. Could I get this out of my mind? No. I asked a friend to go with me to see it, and I pitched him the fact that Offerman was in it. He played the president. My friend was already interested in the movie as it was, but the next 3 or 4 times we hung out, assuredly we were talking about Civil War. And that's the sign of a movie you can't escape, regardless if there's some issues within it. This is a movie that Alex Garland pulled off to the fullest, that doesn't lay into politics at all. It doesn't lay into the typical aspects of war. It doesn't play into which side is right, which side is wrong. It's just, here is this horrible situation, and you're following journalists. It's sort of a monument to what war correspondents do, but at the same time, by the end of the movie, you're left still wondering, what kind of person does this? What kind of person chooses to do this? So there's a lot of questions you have coming out of this. The 4 main journalists in the movie, they're all their motivations are all shown, but they all come to a reckoning with their motivations throughout the story. It's really, really well told. Beautiful film. You never would have known this was made on a $50 million budget, especially with the final war sequence and just how thrilling it was. Like, there's aspects of it where a lot of the stuff is, since you're just following the journalist, is close in on that final assault on Washington, but it never feels like that's the only thing that's going on. It feels like it's part of this large battle. So you never feel like, oh, this is hindered by the budget. It was, but it never felt that. And so if you hear Chris and I complain sometimes about movies overreaching and trying to do stuff they can't do, and like, know what your limitations are, this is a perfect example. You know your limitations of the budget, but it never felt once like it was limited by budget. So I highly recommend Civil War. Not your typical war movie, but a great film.
Yeah, and I think your review encapsulates what, at least in my opinion, is what a 4-star movie is. Because I don't know really what perfect is, because there's always going to be something that people can find flaws in something, especially when it comes to art, because it's going to connect with people in different ways. But a 4-star movie is that movie that haunts you. If you're still thinking about it weeks after you've seen it, and you're still sort of talking to your friend about it, then that is exactly what sort of makes a 4-star movie. It's interesting because war movies started sort of in like the 40s and the 50s, it's kind of like propaganda in America, rah, rah. In some ways, it'd be sort of seen as adventure movies. And it wasn't until the 70s when you start doing the Vietnam pictures where you had Apocalypse Now and Deer Hunter, and then in the 80s you had Platoon, where you started kind of getting these anti-war movies, sort of movies that they're about war, but you didn't come out of them getting excited about war. They were showing you the atrocities and the dangers and the damage they do, and how there isn't necessarily heroes in war, because all those characters came out so broken, and it wasn't necessarily like America rah rah. And while Platoon was going out, the America Raw Raw was sort of being taken back again when you had sort of the Rambos that we talked about recently and Top Gun and such like that. And so then we started getting back to sort of the almost pro-war type pictures. And then like there's Born on 4th of July. Like there's still some definitely anti-war movies that came out in the 80s. And I would say Saving Private Ryan's another one that shows kind of the atrocities of war. I'm wondering, would you deem this as another picture that sort of is seen as an anti-war movie, or do you feel that's not really even the message either?
It's not the message. That's the very interesting and fresh thing about Civil War, because if it was anti-war, they would have told us the bickering that happened to lead to the senseless war. There would have been some sort of message on anything like that. But the fact that there isn't, it's happening. One side could be terrible. One side could be just. We don't know. And it's more about just these people caught up in it. There's no one to cheer against. You don't come out of it thinking, see, this is why we should never vote for that guy. There's no overall feeling of war is bad, war is hell. Who are these people? What are they doing there? What drives them? What motivates them? Their driving force of reporting it, and for different reasons, like I mentioned, why Kirsten Dunst reports it. The other main character, Joel, played by Wagner Moura, he basically gets off on the excitement of it. So there's no like perfect example of what a war correspondent is. Like they're all, just trying to send those images home so that it doesn't happen at home. This guy even talks about how he gets hard. They all have their different motivations. It doesn't answer any questions or put you in any state to think this is what Alex Garland was saying about war.
One thing that I do find really interesting here is I know that there's a lot of people that felt there was some poor timing where they're like, what, you're bringing a movie called Civil War where America's fighting during an election year, and an election year that we know is going to be very controversial and one where I basically just want to stay away from the news because of who's involved again. But anyways, we'll leave it out. This is not a political podcast, but there was a lot of controversy about this picture in that way. But then when it started getting reviewed, they were talking about the fact of exactly what you were saying was it's not really picking any sides. Almost a controversy is the fact that it's not picking a side. It's not trying to necessarily tell you anything. And to the point where, which really stands out to me, is the fact that California and Texas are united. To me, that totally shows that there isn't like an agenda here, because you're putting two states that are very much, because you don't know, is that a liberal or is that a conservative like army that we have here, because you don't know because of those two kind of being together. And the fact that you're saying that we don't even know why the president has a second term, like there's so many vague things, it kind of keeps it away from being political in any way, and having so, like, it's one of those things where you can be conservative or liberal and kind of see this and make your own interpretations. What's interesting though is you talk about how there's a big war sequence at the end and you've got this big war. Do you feel though that one of the challenges that Garland could have with this picture, with this story, connect with so many people, is the fact that there's all that kind of vagueness and there isn't necessarily kind of that stake to the war, or there's an action sequence that people don't have things invested? Or is it, to you, even with those action sequences, it's so little about the war, it's more about these journalists, that there's still something for the average viewer to attach to?
I think the problem with this movie is the time that it came out. I think people are probably writing it off because it hasn't done as well in the box office as I think it should have. And I think people probably wrote it off as a political film. I think if people, like I said, there's an opening sequence in the movie that just sort of snaps you out of it and says, yeah, this is the kind of movie you're sitting in. And everyone in the theater is quiet. Their eyes are glued to the screen. And now we're just sharing this communal experience, regardless of what your political views are. None of that matters in this film. And I think it's the kind of movie that people really would enjoy, not from a entertainment perspective necessarily, but from a viewing and just storytelling perspective. Well, it's still entertainment, but you know what I mean. It's not a block. It's not a tentpole Marvel film. I think the fact that the political climate is such, and the movie came out, even though the trailers try to show that it's not about one side, I think it's inevitable that everyone who sees the trailer at first is probably going to think that this is a very political film. I felt that when I first saw the trailer and didn't know anything about the movie. I just assumed it must have been, considering the climate of North American politics. And so I think that is the biggest struggle it has. It will grip people if they watch it, and I think people will enjoy it. It's just, there's a huge barrier of misconception around the film.
I also think the fact that it's coming from A24 and it's a Hollywood picture, that there's some that will probably jump to the conclusion that it must be liberal, which will maybe alienate the Midwest and sort of the heart of the American type crowd. Even though it's not, and you made that clear, I feel like people will assume, well, it's not coming from a Christian studio. It's coming from A24. It's a Hollywood movie. Oh, I know where they're standing.
Well, and that's the thing is it's easy to assume this is a director in a studio standing on a soapbox saying, like, if you vote Trump, this is what you're getting. But it's not. It backs away from the politics altogether, and it's hard to know that, and you don't know that without seeing it, just because of the political climate and just the assumption that we have that Hollywood hates the conservative right, and therefore this movie will be bashing them, and it's not that at all. It's a very even-keeled, non-political film.
I do want to mention, you were saying that maybe Civil War didn't do as well as they're hoping. It is, though, the 8th highest grossing domestic movie of this year, and the last 2 weeks, now they haven't as a big competitive weeks. April's been kind of a slow month, but for the second straight week, Civil War was the number one highest grossing movie, and it only took a 54.3% drop. So I would still consider this a big hit for A24.
For A24, this is massive. This is really massive. I wish it was doing better. I wish, because of the quality of the film, I still wish that it was doing much better. I could see this movie doing good post-release. I think people need to talk about it. I think word of mouth helps it, because you talked about the drop, the limited drop that it had in the box office. And I think word of mouth is only going to help this film out because of those misconceptions people have about what it could be about, or what, people could think it's going to be a preachy movie, but it absolutely is not, which is part of the freshness of it.
So that is 4 stars from Scott, and I got to see it from me. And now we are going to move on to a biopic, because we don't get those enough. And we're now getting a biopic on Netflix. So we just can get them everywhere now, in theaters and streaming. And if you want a fictional take on real life characters, well, Hollywood and the movie makers have you covered. And this latest one is called Shirley, and it is based off the first Black woman elected to Congress, which obviously was a big, massive thing. This happened in the early 1970s, late 1960s. She was voted into Congress. And so this was a trailblazing woman, Shirley Chisholm, and I would encourage everyone to sort of also get to know more about this woman. This is a big historical figure, someone major in American history that I don't think has been talked about enough. And so this is definitely the type of character that I would love them to make biopics about, characters that maybe aren't as known, but played a major part in history, as this is a woman that inspired very many other women in the future. And this movie kind of hints at the fact that it motivated many other women to get into politics and motivate other people that did major things. She did an historic attempt of running for president in 1972, and that's what this picture is about. This movie is not about the whole life of Shirley. It's really about her presidential campaign in 1972. This was directed by John Ridley, who is probably best known for writing 12 Years a Slave, and he's done some other pictures as well. Apparently he also wrote Ben-Hur, but he probably doesn't want me to mention that one. But he did do 12 Years a Slave, and he is a pretty well-respected writer and director. The big standout for me, surprise, surprise, Regina King, someone we've praised many times. She plays Shirley, and she is a powerhouse in this picture because Shirley is a woman who is not going to back down. They established right at the beginning, there's another Congress white man who's uncomfortable with her being in Congress and being paid the same amount as him. And she basically puts him in his place and dresses him down, and he walks off and doesn't confront her again. And so you really get the idea of this is who she had to be. In the 70s, being black and being a woman, she needed to be a powerhouse. She needed to be someone who had her principles. And in the presidential campaign, the big conflict throughout this picture is the fact that she doesn't want to be your typical president. She wants to be for the people. And so she maybe is not willing to say the things that need to be said to be elected. She's maybe too truthful for her own good. And she clashes with some of her campaign party members. And with her being so devoted to politics, there is some tension that happens between her and her long-suffering husband, Conrad. And so those aspects. And basically what I said is Regina is incredible in this picture. She has a presence. She has a power. Regina, I think, always does a great job of playing strong, powerful, opinionated women. And that aspect really attaches you to this picture. You believe it's Shirley. You believe in her cause. You believe that this is someone that would had the chance to become the first black female president, the first female president, and you believe what she's motivated by. You also, there is a tenderness to Shirley. She is driven and she's opinionated and she won't back down, but she's kind and she's loving. And there is a lot of sweet, tender moments here with people that she mentors, and she has that compassion, and you can see that her heart drives her, and all that is conveyed from Regina's performance here, and that nuance, and just she's just someone who can convey so much from those facial moments and the silent moments. Unfortunately, though, all my praise for Regina is what elevates what is a Wikipedia movie. This is what I kind of felt like sort of Bohemian Rhapsody and some of these other biopics I haven't been to, is it really just feels like it's rattling off events. This is something she did, and now this is something else she did, and this is another accomplishment. This is another moment in her life. And like Bohemian Rhapsody, I don't even know if half these things are factual. It just seems like some people believe this is what biopics need to be. And so it's really unfortunate that I could never connect fully to this picture because it didn't feel like a real story. I didn't feel like I was really learning who Shirley is, despite the movie being called Shirley. I didn't feel I had those opportunities to really dig in this picture and connect to her because it just felt like it was a collection of scenes. And that's one of my biggest nitpick with a lot of biopics. It's just a collection of moments. And there are some good moments. There are some good moments here. I mean, you've got actors like Lance Reddick, and you've got Terrence Howard here. and you've got some really talented people. Barbara Lee, Christina Jackson played Barbara Lee. She is a fantastic character here. I think Christina Jackson had some great moments with Regina King. Those are some of my favorite moments throughout the movie. And because she's sort of a mentor character, and she's trying to she's not sure she wants to get into politics, and Shirley's the one that sort of pushes and encourages Barbara. And so there is great moments, but it never comes as a full movie and story. I never felt like I learned anything about these characters. It was just these are things that happen. It's really unfortunate. Even like it would have been nice to know a bit more. Like Barbara Lee is a real life person who also went into politics. It was a social worker, was a U.S. representative of California, and at least in the movies, she credits Shirley for sort of her career. But I never really know why people made the decisions or what makes Shirley tick. And I agree with just focusing on the presidential campaign in that small period, but I felt the movie didn't take advantage of it being a small period for us to really have a story and dig in. And so it's unfortunate, but I love all the performances here. And so that's why I am going as high as 2.5, because Regina is a powerhouse and there is good moments. It's just the movie as a whole doesn't quite work. One credit I will give John Ridley here, though, is I did enjoy sort of how they use the cinematography and the coloring here, because at times it very much looks like 70s. It felt something of that time. It feels like sort of a picture that makes you set in that time period, lets you know how volatile that time was with sort of the gas and the Vietnam War and people were. And so I think they did do a great job of setting the period and the tone through sort of the visual choices. But as a picture, it's just so standard. And I feel like Shirley Chisholm, someone who I don't know very well, deserves a better movie. So 2.5.
And the one thing I've learned about biopics is when you haven't seen as many, it's not as big of a crime. That a lot of them follow the exact same format. And I mean, we've talked about, like, with rom-coms. Some rom-coms follow the formula, but they're still entertaining. A movie can follow a formula and still be really good. It doesn't have to be Civil War and a whole, fresh look at a genre. The problem with biopics is, at least with rom-coms, there's a higher percentage of formula rom-coms that I like than there is a percentage of formula biopics that I like.
I think the big difference between the two is a rom-com's entire intention is to entertain you. Its entire intention is to be fun. So even when it's generic, you're still having a good time. A lot of these generic biopics are super serious and take themselves as, this is prestige cinema.
That's the problem. Yeah, it's the tone. You're absolutely right. I have to say, Lance Reddick, rest in peace. It's over a year now. I can't believe it's been over a year since he passed away.
And he still showed up in movies.
Man, the guy was amazing.
And he is good here. And I do want, like, it is 2.5. And so it was a movie that was fine. It went down easy. And I think the advantages are all these great performers and the fact that this is a very interesting historical figure. Shirley Chisholm is a very interesting person and had an interesting story. It's just one of those cases where sometimes when you have people this interesting, I wish you had a movie that matched probably their real life story.
Well, to move on to a movie with people who are super interesting and characters that we can invest in.
Oh, we're not doing Rebel Moon Part 2 anymore?
We are jumping into Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scargiver. Zack Snyder's follow-up to Rebel Moon Part 1, the whatever. And I get it. And I said this last time. I get it. You like slow-mo. Harvesting wheat in slow motion does not a good picture make. And I'm not just talking about one moment of harvesting wheat, like a whole sequence of slow motion wheat harvesting. We're talking a full Rocky montage length. It was, look, I'll say this about this film, is it felt a lot shorter than the first one did. I liked this one more than I liked the first one. I'm going to give it 2 stars because I feel like I'm being super generous, but from just a visual perspective, it is not a bad film. Fairly fun battle sequence in the movie. It felt like the pacing was better in this movie than in the first one. So I'm going to be nice to it. What's not good about this film? Why I think I'm being generous is because if we thought that the first movie was derivative, if we thought that there was some like straight up ripping off of things in the first movie, this movie, the whole thing, this is Seven Samurai. This is the Magnificent Seven. This is let's train the village to fight. Let's do all the things in those films that were iconic and follow it to a T. And then, right before the big battle, we remember we don't know anything about these characters at all. So we're going to have a situation where they sit around a table and they give a little bit of backstory and slow motion backstory. Every backstory that these people give is done almost 100% in slow motion. I don't mind slow motion. There's tricks to the trade. There's things that directors can do. There's things you can do as a storyteller, and you can dip into them and you use them when they're effective. If you do the same thing all the time, it loses its effectiveness. The slow motion in this film is so obnoxious. The characters are pointless. After watching, so Zack Snyder, the real movie is going to be coming out soon, I guess. The R-rated versions, which are going to make each portion like 3 hours long. The problem is not these movies needed to be longer. The problem is these movies needed to be shorter. The part 1 and part 2, these are actually one film and should have been one film. And I think may have been, if you put them in one film, even though it's derivative, it could have been a 3-star movie. There was focus on what needed to be focused on. Drop out this idea that everything has, like all the backstory has to be expository, and you need people like doing the as you know sequences. And this could have been 1 2-hour movie, and it probably would have been a lot more successful. It would have been more succinct. You would have had to get rid of all those, 10-minute long exposition dumps. We don't need. Here's the thing. In A New Hope, because this was supposed to be a Star Wars movie. You'd never know that because there's nothing Star Wars about this at all.
No lightsabers.
No lightsabers. Oh my gosh. I thought that was supposed to be something special she had, but it turns out everyone's got them.
I was confused by that.
Okay. In A New Hope, yes, there's expository dialogue scrawled on the screen. But guess what? That's like all there is in the movie. What do we know about the Empire? Why are they bad? We actually don't know. If you watch that movie again, well, you learn when let's blow up a town, or not just a town, let's blow up a planet because, we got to flex our muscles. That's how you learn things. You don't need this long history that actually doesn't add any weight to the story, because the thing is, in Rebel Moon Part 1 and 2, this history doesn't add anything to the actual present story that we're watching. This could have been one film. It should have been one film. No, check that. I'm giving it 1.5 stars, and I still feel that's generous. I'm changing my rating, 1.5 stars. This is not good storytelling. It looks good, and I'll say this. So the budget for these 2 films is about $160 to $180 million, which means that per film, that's like $80 or $90 million each. They look good for that budget. That I don't think there's any other than hair and makeup. They look, with Belisarius, they look good for what they cost. If you ask Zack Snyder, there's another 4 of these movies on the way. He thinks that the story could be wrapped up in another 4 to 6, or another 2 to 4 movies, making 6 total. He also believes that more people watched Rebel Moon Part 1 than saw the Barbie movie in theaters. Like, I'm having a hard time with Zack Snyder now. He has listened to his small group of fans way too much. He's now believing everything. Like, he seems like the word is delusional. Like, he really seems delusional. Barbie was one of the biggest cultural movie moments in the last 10 years. Would we say 10 years?
Easily.
And his film got viewed more than it. Zach.
No one's talking about this movie. Sorry to interrupt, but no one's talking about it. There's no way he's telling the truth.
Nobody's talking about it. I think it was on Joe Rogan's podcast. He even broke down numbers. Like, if we look at these numbers and multiply them by this and assume that 2 people are watching per viewing and blah, 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 and then we multiply it by how many dollars it would make in the theater. Like, no, Zach, like, it's not that he just had a whim. He sat down. He's actually crunched the numbers. He believes this. Fictional numbers, absolutely. So I think delusional is a good word. Like, Zack Snyder, I have liked some of your movies, but something needs to be freshened up.
More people listen to the movie breakdown than they drink water. The movie breakdown is the most consumed thing in the world, because if you think about it, if one person's listening, they're probably listening with about 100 people in an auditorium, and then that's connected to like another auditorium that has like 1,000 people, and then that one, like, they're like satelliting it and streaming it to another auditorium that has 1 million people. And so the amount of people that listen to movie breakdown is just absolutely baffling. And if you times that by 1 million just because, like, wow, look at those stats I gave.
You're not wrong, though. You're not wrong. Like, those are crazy stats, but they all line up. Like, that's along the lines of the Zack Snyder logic. I don't get it.
You can't assume things of who's in a room. My goodness. But okay, so we reviewed the first episode, the first movie, because a listener really wanted us to review it. He really wanted us to hear his take on Zack Snyder. And I mean, I'd like to please our listeners. I was actually going to skip the original Rebel Moon just because of us missing so many episodes, us being behind. But when the listener said, I really want to hear your take, and I've told all my coworkers, and we're all excited to hear your review, it's like, oh, well, now we definitely have to review Rebel Moon. And then he actually made a comment saying that he thought we were too easy on Rebel Moon. He really enjoyed our review. He said it was worth the wait, but he was actually surprised we went easy on it. So to that listener, I give you Rebel Moon Part 2, and I promise you now that I won't go as easy as I did on the original Rebel Moon. This movie's awful, and I think one of the big things that really made me dislike this picture is the fact that when we saw the first one, I was like, well, this feels like half of a movie. This feels like the 10-minute montage at the beginning of the movie, gave the team together, and that's literally the whole movie. What a ridiculous concept. But let's see what the second one does. When I watched the second one, I realized it was basically the rest of Magnificent Seven, the rest of the Seven Samurai. I hated the first one even more and this one even more because I was like, there is no reason in the world this needed to be 2 movies, because this story's already been told and they were able to do it in 2 hours. Why did this have to be, 4-5 hours in this version and then 6 or 7 hours in the upcoming version? I mean, this is the first movie. Like, you take out the big battle sequence at the end of the first one and you put all that at the end of this movie, and you have a full movie. But for some reason, he cut it into two pieces. And this picture, so this one, there is not as much battle sequences as the first one. We basically are on one planet for most of it. And so you even lose, like there weren't really cool aliens or worlds in the first one, but at least there were aliens and worlds. Here we lose a lot of the aliens. We lose a lot of the different worlds. It's on one world. And the first stretch of the movie basically has no big action sequences. And I believe this movie thinks it's doing the character development scenes. Like this is the building, and we're learning about the characters. And I learned absolutely nothing. It was such inane and useless dialogue. Like I have never seen a 90-minute stretch of character development that did less. I mean, there was so much talking. It was just filler. It was just bubble gum. It was just like those Rice Crisps that you have. It was vapor. Like it was almost nothing. It's as if I decided to eat just oxygen the whole day. Like there was nothing of these 90 minutes where, like there was, I guess, a love affair that started between the leads, which had absolutely no chemistry. And I guess it was supposed to be sexy time, but I didn't believe they loved each other. I didn't understand where their affection for each other came. It was completely flat. We had to put up with that. And then all these characters that came in are trained the villagers, and you get some screen time for these villagers. None of them do I learn anything other than they want to save their village. Thanks. I figured that at the very beginning of the first one. None of these characters really have any development other than one guy likes to lift up his axe. Another guy can scream. Another one has a light sword. Like that, those are their characters. And we had to go with 90 minutes of just absolute fluff. The most interesting character is the android who disappears for most of the movie again. Shows up a little bit. And really, it's kind of superfluous. He doesn't really have much of a point either. I guess he's building for the next ones, which I really do not want to see. I don't even know what's the point of it anymore. And then we get to the action sequence, and thank goodness it's in slow-mo so I can catch all the action. Oh, wait, no, I can't because it's directed. It's shaky cam, fast cut style that, like, there's one major character that's, like, dies. And it's supposed to be this big emotional moment. And I don't even know how he died or why he was hurt. It's just also like, oh, he's dying now. Oh, okay. I guess because it's time for the other character to be sad. And then, like, we have the big showdown, the big baddie and the hero. We finally get to see it. I don't know what happened there other than eventually one of them I know got killed. But I don't know what, like, it lost all its big showdown because just the camera is just like having a rave. Like it's all over the place. And once in a while I see a limb and once in a while I see a head. Like the action sequences, there is some big explosions and there is some cool sound design, but as actually following the world for 40 minutes, like we're building to this big final battle. And I just felt like there was nothing there but flashy colors and explosions. So I'm going 1 star because I did not enjoy myself.
I didn't enjoy
myself. Listener.
There we go. Yeah, enjoy it. Take that, listener. You've pushed us to this. There was something you said about the first film that there was no thought put into the world building because you had like this incredibly rustic like peasant village, but then like sliding mechanical doors and stuff like that. Zack Snyder remembers there was a time when steampunk was a thing, and so it's like let's have these ships running off of coal. And let's have like crank wheels to turn the big cannons. Right. But also you have the technology to just guide a shuttle into your ship. Oh, we're having a problem here. Oh, we'll guide you in. Let's enter that into the computer. There's no actual consistency to this world. I have no problems that everything's running off of coal and there's like rudimentary technology behind things, but make that consistent. Oh, I forgot to say, if you've read Julius Caesar, I don't know, it's just a little play written by some dude back in the years ago. You may catch a moment in this movie that you're like, this may have been lifted directly from Julius Caesar. with, for some reason, an orchestra playing in the same room.
That was horrible. That whole sequence was horrible. I'm sorry, but that was supposed to be like some epic moment, and it was just so poorly put together, and it dragged out for so long when everyone knew the conclusion, and you got your local theater performers in there with their amazing costumes. My goodness, I didn't even understand. When it came to actual logistics and actual sort of understanding the world, after 2 movies, I'm clueless. Like, I don't even understand. How did they get into power? Like, I get they killed the, like, I don't understand anything. Like, how they all said rule so quickly, because it seems like this just happened recently. And yes. Now they've basically ruled the whole galaxy? How did this happen?
Well, and that's the thing. That's the thing, right? It's like, if you did none of those big expository dumps, we wouldn't even care, because we wouldn't be like picking it apart. We're just like, we just know that they're the bad guys. We don't need to know all that stuff. But if you start talking about how important it is, how they got into power, but it doesn't make sense, then there's a problem. If he just left all that stuff out, it would have been fine.
And like, Anthony Hopkins was grabbed on his lunch break, right?
Oh gosh, yeah.
Like, he was in between having a Big Mac, and they're like, "Oh, can you read some lines for us, Anthony?"
Actually, he was supposed to be in Civil War, and they said, "We've got a great job for you playing a Star War." And he's like, "Oh gosh!" And so that's when they had to get Plemons. They had to get Plemons to come in to fill in for Anthony Hopkins. But little did he know that he wasn't actually going to be in a real Star War. Anthony Hopkins was going to be in this Star War.
He doesn't even have a real part.
And the way doesn't the first movie like end with him, like a picture of him leaving us thinking like he's going to be an integral part of the films?
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely. I thought he was going to be huge here, and he still was not.
So I was generous. I gave it 1.5 stars. Chris gave it 1. There you go.
Yeah, I don't like this movie. This is the type of movie that I have to watch after failing a certain contest. A contest known as the Summer Box Office Challenge. And yes, that's right, folks. We are now ready for the Summer Box Office Challenge 2024 draft. And I have to say that after losing, that I don't necessarily have the same panic anymore. Now that both me and Scott have had our moments of loss, there's not sort of the same amount of stress of trying to win this time, even though I do want to win. But that's a good thing, because I have to say, maybe we say this every year, but I think this year, because it's not that typical summer where there's these really obvious tent poles. I thought this was a really hard draft to figure out. Even like, usually I find, okay, I know my top 4 or 5. I struggled even with that.
Oh yeah, this is. There's nothing certain about this. Like, this is all guesswork.
All right, so now all that to say, I don't want to go through that again. And you're like, if you're a first-time listener or you weren't with us last year, you're like, what are you guys even talking about? Well, the Summer Box Office Challenge is when both me and Scott look at the summer and we try to predict what we think will be the movies that get the highest domestic opening weekend. And a domestic opening weekend is a Friday to a Sunday, no matter when it actually comes out. So if it comes out on the Wednesday, or also you got your Thursday screenings, we look at the Friday to the Sunday to make it fair with every single movie. And so we just look at that weekend. So there is some movies where if they come out on Wednesday, you could potentially have a bit of a challenge because they've already been out for a few days. But that's what we do. We're looking for the highest grossing domestic picture. So that's North America, from Friday to Sunday, and we are drafting 10 movies each. And then whoever has the highest total at the end, he is our champion, he is our winner, he's our paragon, and then he gets to laugh at the loser and then tell the loser that they have to watch 3 movies. That person gets to choose the 3 movies, and then that person has to watch them and review them. And I apologize that it has been this long before I've reviewed it. I meant to do it back in September, and I know you people are probably so tired of excuses, but all I can say is I've just been in a tornado. You could tell it by the movie breakdown not coming out as much as it should, my site not being very frequent. It's been a really tough year getting my career back on track. I lost a lot of clients during pandemic, which then put me through a big emotional spiral, and it led to a lot of other relationships and many issues. It's not been a banner time. I'm hoping to turn things around. I've told before that I am pursuing a lot of medical professionals to get back on track. I am trying to put on a lot of strategies about confidence, again, things. I think things are going to get better, but I really do apologize of my part of what's happened with the podcast, as it's not been as posted as regularly the last year. Hopefully going forward, it's a new month and a new beginning. The summer's here. Hope the movie breakdown will be coming at you every Wednesday going forward. Podcast will be busy again. The website will be busy again. And I'm hoping my life is going to be in a lot better place. I'm laying a bit of work, and I am trying to focus some more. But just to be vulnerable with you, it's been tough. And I know excuses suck, but that really is. I just forgot about these movies because I've been just panicking, and there hasn't been a lot I've done in the last year, and it's sad to say that there's been a lot of things I haven't even got a lot of pleasure from because of where I've been through. And so I've just been forgetting things, discarding things. One great kind of beacon in my life is that I have been able to do theater and musicals with my family. We did Beauty and the Beast, upcoming Anastasia, and that has been one thing that's kind of given me something, given me energy, given me hope. But that's also a thing where, like, you got to memorize lines, and you got to memorize songs, and you got to memorize dance numbers. And so it has given me something, but it's also very time-consuming. It's a time-consuming hobby, and so it's been a lot of challenges. So I do apologize to my listeners. We do value you. I will take it state. It is my fault. I am trying to get things back on track. And if we talk about another pleasure, it is doing this show with Scott. I value Scott. I love Scott. I do like this show, even though if you haven't seen as much, I love our listeners. So all that to say, we are going to do a draft now to my first pick because I was the loser. This year is crazy. Absolutely crazy. I have no clue what's going to be the highest grossing movie this summer due to the strike. I mean, you don't have a lot of those big traditional tentpole pictures. I don't think there's going to be very many movies that break 100 million this summer. And so again, the strike delayed a lot of stuff, pushed a lot of stuff. There's not a lot of MCU. There's not a lot of those superhero movies, not a lot of those traditional big tentpoles. And so this was a crazy year. But my number one pick, there is one superhero movie. And I know we talk about superhero fatigue. And I know we also talk about sort of R-rated movies aren't going to typically be your highest grossing movie. But I am, as my number one pick, going for Deadpool and Wolverine for a few reasons. One, we haven't had any MCU movies this year. And I think the lack of MCU movies is going to make this one more appealing. On top of that, the first two Deadpool movies is what got studios believing, oh, you can do R-rated movies because it does make a lot of money. They have broke 100 million. I think this one will break 100 million. Plus, you have Hugh Jackman returning, which I think is a huge draw. Wolverine versus Deadpool as the actual characters against each other in sort of that Deadpool style. People like the Deadpool movies. People love Wolverine. You put those things together. Hugh Jackman doing the character one more time. And I know it's R-rated, but I really think, and I've had this experience with when Rock was in R-rated movies, that parents are dumb and they're not even going to pay attention to that. I fully expect there being a whole bunch of kids in this movie, in this theater, because it's an MCU movie, and it's Wolverine. I think parents are going to bring it. I think teenagers are going to find a way to get in. I think this is going to be a huge draw. I don't think the R-rated thing is going to affect this kind of movie at all. I bet theaters will barely even like check them for this movie. And if they do, again, they just have to find a parent and come in. Just have to find someone who's 18. This is going to be a huge hit. I'm projecting it over 100 million. And it's the only one that I'm confident that will get over 100 million. So I feel this is a good number one pick.
It's the number one pick. It's a Deadpool movie. There's been enough time between Deadpool movies, and yes. Hugh Jackman, not just Hugh Jackman back as Wolverine, but like classic Wolverine outfit.
Which we've never seen.
No, so this is the only movie on my list that I thought was a sure pick. My first pick is just a guess. I'm going with Fall Guy. There's been a lot of promos for it. It's got Ryan Gosling. It's got Emily Blunt. Looks like it's got a good mix of humor and comedy. This could be an action-packed film that the family can enjoy. My pick is The Fall Guy.
You don't know how bummed I am that you swept in and got Fall Guy this early. I thought it was going to be my sleeper pick. This is one where what the analysts are thinking, I think they're wrong. I think Fall Guy is going to be a massive surprise hit. You've got Ryan Gosling coming off of the Barbie movie. You got Ryan Gosling, Emily Blunt, two likable characters. Movies like Lost City and some recent romantic comedies show that people are kind of into romance again. And this has got romance. It's got real legit stunts. It's got amazing action sequences. It's got comedy. It feels like a throwback movie. I feel this is a movie that is going, and I don't think the IP matters. Like, it's a really old TV show. They're not even selling it on that. They're selling it on Gosling. They're selling it on humor. They're selling it on stunts. And I think that the younger crowd's not going to care. They've never seen that show because this just looks like a fun movie.
Well, that's the thing. They're not tying it to the show at all, and it doesn't need to. This is, if you're going to revive a property, this is a great way to do it. Just take the concept from a property, acknowledge it in the title, just go your own way with it.
My second one comes down to the battle of which animated movie am I going to choose? Because their sequels and their previous movies did really well. I went back and forth on this, but in the end, I'm going out with Inside Out 2 because Inside Out 2 is getting a lot of talk at my kids' playgrounds and at school. They're really excited about, there's new emotions. And that seems to have actually got people excited to see the new emotions. Inside Out seems to be a movie that most people fondly remember. And so I know Pixar's in a bit of a slump. I think it's going to break here. I think it's going to do great in the theater.
I think it is too. I think this is going to be a win for Pixar. They kind of need it. We'll see. I think the downside with Pixar is maybe, I don't know if it was they got complacent, didn't see the challenges rising from the quality of animation on things like Netflix. It almost seemed like they weren't adjusting to the times, to the quality that was out there on other platforms, and just taking where Pixar were going to have hits. I think Inside Out 2 is going to be that hit.
And it seems like people are talking about it, and it's not coming out until June. So I feel like, I think it's going to do really well.
My next pick, bring it on, Furiosa. We are going back to the wild world of the post-apocalyptic sand dunes. And this is a guess. Everything is a guess as far as what I'm picking, but I'm guessing Furiosa is going to do well.
Yeah, that's a super solid pick because I'm pretty convinced, and I could be wrong because it's all guesses, like you said. I think this is actually going to do better than the previous Mad Max because the previous Mad Max was a movie where, it was 20 years since the previous one. So a lot of people are like, what was Mad Max again? And it was a different star with Tom Hardy. And so I think there's a lot of things kind of working against it. The trailers made it look so different. But that one did so well critically, and it's a movie that people still talk about and still like, it's the type of movie they don't make anymore. And the stunts and just how it has become such a big part of the cultural zeitgeist. You attach it, you got Anya Taylor-Joy here. You've got a star that people love. You've got the promise of those big action sequences again, a world that's engaging. I think it's doing better than the original. I think we've got a huge hit here.
I think the original, is one of my favorite movies of all time. It was a bit of a word of mouth film, and there was a lot of word of mouth. But I think a lot of people discovered it after it had left the theaters. Whereas something like Top Gun, the word of mouth was instantaneous. And I think that Furiosa does have a chance, like you said, of doing better.
It's time to call me the animated guy, because I'm going with yet another anime movie. I didn't think I was going to get both of them, so I hope they both deliver. My next pick is Despicable Me 4. I know the Despicable Me movies don't do as well as the Minion movies, but the marketing seems to be leaning in on the Minions here. And this is a franchise that always seems to do super well, at least close to 100 million. And it's a few weeks removed from Inside Out 2, so I don't think they'll compete. Inside Out 2 could dominate June. Despicable Me could dominate July.
I think that's a good pick. That was my next pick. You swept in and took it. Boo on you. Despicable Me is a very, very consistent performer. It absolutely is. Which leaves me having to guess one or the other. I'm not confident in this at all. I think the time for this franchise has gone. The trailers don't look as crisp in the CGI department as the previous movies. I don't think there's the trailers haven't convinced me there's a reason to return to the Planet of the Apes, but I'm going with the Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes as my pick because there's very little as far as big blockbuster style movies. That's the only reason I'm picking it. In another year, this would have been a much lower pick.
I think that's a great pick. You just snagged what was going to be my next pick. So I agree with where you put this one because you nailed it. There's not a lot of big tentpole movies coming out this summer. It's still coming out fairly early. It's coming out this month. So it's got a lot of advantages. It's coming in early in the summer. People are just getting into the movie-going season. And it's from a franchise that's done fairly well. I think this is going to be a big hit, and I think you might be surprised of how well this one does for you, even at number 3.
I hope. Last year I picked Barbie at number 5, so let's hope my 5th pick is as good.
I am not a huge fan of my next pick, but I don't know what to pick instead. We've already come to that spot, only at number 4, and I'm like, do I like this movie? No, I don't. But, I mean, I get Will Smith has maybe not endeared himself to people. And we're going to now find out if he's hurt his draw with that famous slap. And it's in a franchise. I don't know if anyone's demanding sequels. But recently, action comedies have done fairly well. And with people getting tired of blockbusters, they're sort of, I think, gravitate towards these kind of movies. So I'm going with Bad Boys 4, Ride or Die. I'm not 100% confident in this picture, but I think it has the potential to give me at least 60 million. And at this point, I think that's a decent pick.
I had it on my list, but much further down. I have this fear that it's going to crash and burn. This is also a very unpredictable summer. My next pick, I'm doing this just because if family movies are successful this year, I need to have one. You picked the 2 that were high up on my list. You robbed them right out from under me. So I'm going with If. It's got Ryan Reynolds. It's got John Krasinski, Steve Carell doing a voice. This could be a fun film. It's directed by John Krasinski. It's got the late Louis Gossett Jr. I didn't realize that he was in this. Bring it on. Okay, If is my guaranteed pick. If is going to win because everyone's like, oh, I remember Iron Eagle. Let's go see that movie with the guy from Iron Eagle.
If you want to base picks off what my daughter's excited to see, like what trailers have captured her attention, like what my daughter said, can we go to theater to see this? Then you have just got the golden one. Because of all the movies this summer, well, actually, no, Inside Out 2 is the movie she wants to see the most. But after that, she has talked about If quite a bit. And I feel like it can't be just her. I think this is a movie that kids are going to be asking their parents to take them to. I think the trailer is appealing to kids. And, I mean, we're always looking for things to occupy our kids' time.
Yeah, so bring it on.
This one is based off a horror movie that was a big massive hit, but I realize this is a spin-off, and spin-offs never do as well as like a straight sequel. But I mean, it's got Lupita Nyong'o. It's got a world that people enjoy. It's been a few years, not tons, but there's a few years in between. So I feel like people are ready to return to A Quiet Place and to see how it all happened. So my next pick is A Quiet Place Day One.
That was my next pick as well. This is one that could be breakout. This could be the pick that, determines who wins, because it's the kind of movie that could have a shocking opening weekend, and I hope it doesn't. It was my next pick. My pick, though, is going to be Twisters. Why? Because Twisters are cool, and it's got Glenn Powell. Glenn Powell, his name is rising after Anyone But You, him and Sydney Sweeney. They're both getting a huge boost from that. He was in Top Gun, did a great job in that as the Val Kilmer-ish kind of character. Hey, he was the Val Kilmer-ish kind of character in a movie with Val Kilmer in it. That's impressive. But I think this could do well. It could be a flop, but it could be a movie that makes enough on its opening weekend.
What I love about this contest we do is the sleeper hits. Those movies that get picked sort of in the middle, a little bit later in the draft. We're not that confident. And then all of a sudden, they do a Barbie. And I'm not saying Twisters is going to do a Barbie, but I think Twisters could be the game changer, potentially. I didn't know when to pick this one. I had a hard time with this one, but I feel you may pick the movie that really changes who wins this, because, I mean, I don't think people necessarily think super fondly of the first Twister, but they're kind of aware of it. And I think it was one that some people have some nostalgia and affection for. We haven't had a lot of natural disaster movies on the big screen in a long time. And I think one of the things that's come from the superhero fatigue, I think the big thing is people want new kind of movies. They want something different that they haven't seen in a while. Twister is delivering something we haven't seen in a while. And so I think it is going to appeal to those people who do want to go to the movies, but they just don't want to see the same thing again. And they're like, oh, I remember Twister. And what? It's more than one tornado? Count me in. Tornadoes are going to fight? I don't know if they will, but they are. Maybe.
They will.
Who knows?
They will.
But what I'm saying is, I think this is a type of movie that may really shock people. Middle of the summer, looking for something to do. It could I think this is either going to be an Independence Day resurgence, like a thing where it just does not deliver like the first one, or it could be a Top Gun Maverick. Like, I think it's either or. My
fingers are crossed for it.
Yeah, so I'm sorry to see that one go, because I really think it's going to be a big sleeper hit. My next one's another one that I think could do surprisingly well. I don't know how many kids still know who Garfield is, but I think there are some. My kids still do. And the animation here looks really cheery and energetic. And it's the first animated movie that's going to come out this summer. It's going to beat Inside Out. It's going to beat Despicable Me 4. And so I think that's to the advantage of Garfield. Something for the kids in May. It looks fun. It looks cheery. It's something the parents know. It's not going to do Super Mario numbers, but I think that idea of something that appeals to kids, but parents remember, is going to be what makes Garfield, I'm hoping, like about a 30 million opening.
This was, yeah, this is like, we just don't know with a movie like this.
Well, it could be a flop.
You picking this saved me, though, because the movie that I'm thinking could be the counter-programming king/queen of the summer, you've left it open to me. And so my next pick, Channing Tatum, Scarlett Johansson, Fly Me to the Moon. This could be the counter-programming gem of the summer.
Oh, man, you took Fall Guy and Fly to the Moon. The two movies that I both thought, oh, these could be sort of the outside surprises. And I was like, do not sleep on these. And I slept on both of them. I lost Fall Guy and Fly to the Moon. Yeah, I think Fly the Moon, this could be anything. This could be 5 million or this could be 20 million because it's coming out, I think, right in the heat of the summer. And it's so different than these other kind of action pictures. This could be like girls' trip type numbers.
Yeah, it really could be. You've got two extremely likable leads. I have I have no idea how there couldn't be chemistry between Tatum and Johansson. I think it's going to be brilliant.
I wasn't super confident about Bad Boys. I'm less confident about my seventh pick, but I'm like, it's a recognizable name. And at seventh pick, like even 20 million might be good. So even though I'm not confident in it, Alien Romulus, here you are. Fede Alvarez, I love him as a director. I think this could be better than any of the recent Ridley Scott Alien movies. Is it going to be huge? Well, in August, when it gets quieter, it kind of stands out as maybe the top choice.
Yeah, that's. And here's the thing. Okay, so speaking of August, I believe Craven the Hunter just got bumped from August 30th to like December 13th. So
Yes.
either that says that Sony, because the December time slot is no joke. That is a no joke time.
I know, what
So-
a weird time to do it. From August. August
From
an
August.
easy month. December competitive month.
What's
Is
going on
Craven
here?
good then?
I don't know, but I was going to pick that ahead of Alien because I just didn't know. The Alien franchise, the Alien name is not what it was, not what it once was. But I still think it can be a draw.
Do you know if this is rated R?
I don't. Let's
I
see.
feel that would benefit it.
I feel like it would as well. There's no rating on IMDb at the moment.
Because if it's R, then people will know, oh, we're getting real alien kills. If it's PG-13, I actually think it tanks the movie. Like, I think it's an expendable situation.
The next movie I'm picking because I hope it does well, not because I believe it'll do well. But I think there was enough interest in X and in Pearl, especially after release. I think that they were talked about well. The Ty West's next film, Maxine. I think that it's going to have a fan base going into it that are very fond of those other two films, and I think that this has got a good chance. It's got a great cast. It's got Mia Goth. It's got Elizabeth Debicki. It's got Michelle Monaghan. It's got Bobby Cannavale, Lily Collins, Halsey, Giancarlo Esposito, Kevin Bacon. Like, it's
awesome.
It's awesome. So I think there's a chance here that this could be a good film. There's also a chance that it could be just missed in the theater.
Yeah, I think this is like a Furiosa situation where it's not going to do Furiosa numbers, but I feel Furiosa is doing better than its previous movie because the word of mouth is in there now. This world is established. People are really excited about returning to Mad Max, and they love the Furiosa character. I think Maxine's the same thing. The first two didn't do great in theaters, but they got a great reputation, and they did great in rentals, and word of mouth built. And so when people find out this is the third in the trilogy, I think it does the best of the three, and I think it becomes a surprise hit.
I think so. So fingers crossed. I've said that too many times today, but fingers crossed. Legitimately, they're crossed.
M. Night Shyamalan made a comeback, and he got respected again. And he made some pictures like Split and The Visit that got people all back in the Shyamalan train. And then Glass disappointed, and Old was a disaster. And so I don't know where Shyamalan stands with people. I'm still ready to give him a chance because I enjoy him, and I think he's a lot of fun. And so that's why my eighth pick is one where I am very nervous of how this does. All I can say is it looks like it's getting a wide release, and so that's beneficial. That's a win. I'm going with M. Night Shyamalan's Trap.
This wasn't even on my list, mostly because I just forgot about it. the thing is, it's really going to come down to Shyamalan's name because, okay, so names aren't the draw anymore. However, names can be a discouragement. If people, like, if you're like me and you did not like Glass and you really did not like Old, then seeing Trap the name is actually keeping me home from doing it. So while this is risky. This is a risky one, Chris.
It is risky, but I forgot the last movie he did. I actually really liked, and I think was fairly well reviewed. Knock at the Cabin.
That was a good one. That was
his last one.
How did I forget that one? And you know what the thing is? What I loved about that movie is in the opening bit that he used like every obnoxious style of like stylistic directing, and it worked. It still worked, and I was like, tip of my hat to you, because these are all things I would hate individually, but somehow you got me sold. So
that's what got me to do the 8th. I remember now why I went with 8, because I said his last one was Knock at the Cabin, and I think people largely liked it. So I'm hoping that removes Old from people's minds.
Okay, I am now going with a biopic because it's about time we get to biopics, and this one doesn't need to be good at all. I don't think this is just going to tap into how big is the Amy Winehouse fan base. This is Back to Black. I honestly never cared about Amy Winehouse, but the people who did really, really did. And so it'll be interesting to see if they turn up. Does the movie on itself, outside of her name, look very interesting? I don't know. But the crowd may go and see it, so that's why I'm making it my pick.
This could be another massive get for you this late, because for a few reasons. One, Bob Marley proved that people love going to see sort of music biopic pictures, because that did really well, and Amy Winehouse definitely has her crowd, so it being that kind of movie I think benefits. And the other is there's not a lot of geared to adult movies this summer, and so people are going to be waiting for a movie that's geared to them. Oh, look, Back in Black.
Yeah, this could be a winner for me, but it also could be a huge failure.
Kind of am mad at myself for this next pick because I don't know what I'm doing. But I saw the trailer. It did not appeal to me. I've never played the video game, but part of me is like, it is based off a video game, but apparently the trailer is nothing like the video game. It's more trying to mimic Guardians of the Galaxy. So is that going to annoy the video game fans and so they won't come? Or will it make people be like, ooh, this looks like Guardians of the Galaxy, and that's done, so I want to see a Guardians of the Galaxy type movie. So I have no idea if this is going to make 1 million or if it's going to make 10 million. We're at that point where I'm happy with that. But I'm picking Borderlands. I don't know much about the game, and from what I've heard, it doesn't look like the trailer's following the game, so that could really bite it in the butt and backfire. But I'm hoping a little bit being a recognizable IP, and the fact that people who don't know Borderlands will look at it and be like, oh, a new version of Guardians of the Galaxy. And I like those kind of movies. Will make it a decent 9th pick.
It was going to be my 9th pick. I hate to rain on your hope, but fans of the game hate how this movie looks.
That's what I thought.
They hate that Kevin Hart is playing Roland. Roland is this big, serious warrior, and you got in the games.
That again?
Right? Like, there's no logical reason. Kate Blanchett as Lilith? Bring it on. Jamie Lee Curtis as Tannis? Yeah, I've played the games a bit. I know by a bit, I've sunk a few hundred hours into the games. But I can tell you this. There are some casting decisions here that have fans of the games livid, and I don't like the chances.
So here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. Is this a movie where fans get so annoyed we end up with sort of a Ghostbuster situation from 2016 where, yeah, people don't show up because this is not my borderland? Or do we get hate watchers? Do we get people that complain, but they still go to see it so that they can hate it? And then it turns out, okay.
I don't think we're getting hate watchers with this.
It's ninth pick.
Well, remember I did say it was my ninth pick. It was going to be my next pick.
But I really don't know if this is even a bad pick at 9. Because I feel like from looking at it and what I heard, where this is nothing like the video game, we could be looking at like literally a 1 million opening weekend for a wide release movie.
Yeah. And
I look at it and I have no interest in this movie. I saw the trailer and no attachment to the video game. I just looked at it and said, oh, this is a Guardians of the Galaxy knockoff. This looks stupid.
Yeah, it does no justice to the game whatsoever. My next pick could be a $1 million. I wouldn't even be surprised if it turns out this movie is no longer in wide release when it comes out and ends up in limited release. But it's got Nicolas Cage in it. It's got Maika Monroe. I'm going with Long Legs.
Oh boy, this was not on my list just because I didn't know if it would go wide. But to say that this is one of the movies I'm anticipating most of the summer, that would be a truth. So if we're going by my anticipation, this is making like 80 million.
Yeah, this is right up there.
I really want to see Nicolas Cage as a serial killer. This looks fantastic. I just don't know how it will do. It reminds me of like a few years ago where one of our listeners was like so shocked. Why didn't you guys pick Baby Driver? Aren't you excited to see it? And we're like, we are excited to see it. We don't think anyone else is.
That's just it. There's a huge difference there. There's a huge difference. I'm excited to see it, and I hope it does well. I don't think it will, just being honest.
My final pick, my pick to end this off is something where if this came out when I was a kid, I probably would have been excited because I loved the books and I loved the 5-minute cartoons that would show up on TVO. It totally went with my imagination, creating new worlds. But I don't think any kids know what this is now. And they're not even doing it as a little boy. He's now a grown-up man. So I don't even know if they're taking the material seriously or if they're making fun of it. But so I don't know how this will hit, but it's a family movie. It's a family movie in August, and it's about imagination, so there's potential that kids will come to it. Harold and the Purple Crayon is my final pick.
That was coming up for me as well, because you never know with family movies, they could easily surprise. There's been so many shockers. Family movies and things like rom-coms or comedies can be the biggest shockers of the summer season. And I think that's a good pick. My next pick, who is this even going to still be? This is going to be wide release because there's just nothing going on. But would I be surprised if it wasn't? No, this is the Bike Riders motorcycle movie, but it's got Jodie Comer. It's got Austin Butler. It's got Tom Hardy. It's got Michael Shannon. That's a great list of people. Once again, wouldn't be surprised if it gets bumped down to limited, but I got to take a shot on something. Everything on my list right now, honestly, could be bumped down to limited.
You've got some giant leaps there, but I mean, look at your options. I mean, the Crow trailer looked horrible. Like, so who's going to go? Like, Crow fans don't want to see it, and then if you're not a Crow fan, it also doesn't look good.
No, and what you gonna pick? Strangers Chapter 1?
I haven't even seen a trailer for that. And so, yeah, no, you're right. Like, after years of, like, there being a solid horror movie that comes in the summer, a lot of the movies that I would have normally sort of been like, oh, Crow, or another Strangers, I would have potentially picked, but these ones just look so flat and no one's talking about them.
Well, we talked about movies as well this week. We did movie reviews for 3 films, and right now I'm just going to run down the ratings we gave for those films. First of all, Civil War, the Alex Garland movie about a modern-day civil war in America. Not a perfect movie, but a movie I'm giving a perfect score to, 4 stars. It just had me thinking too much, and I love that when a movie haunts me. And then Shirley, biopic that was unfortunately for Chris standard biopic fare. Even though it had the wonderful acting talents that it did, Regina King, that's an Oscar and Emmy Award winning talent right there. She did a great job, but Chris just felt like the movie itself was too formulaic. He gave that 2.5 stars. And then Rebel Moon Part 2, the Scargiver.
What does that even mean?
Well,
he gave her a scar, so he calls her the Scargiver. Like, well, wow, that's some great writing.
The writing is phenomenal. The movie's phenomenal. The character development is phenomenal. I gave it 1.5 stars. Chris gave it 1. There you go.
Question of the week is, what is your most anticipated summer movie? What's the movie you want to see the most? And for me, really into The Fall Guy. I think The Fall Guy just looks like so much fun. I'm also very excited about Inside Out. And of course, as we already mentioned, Long Legs, which is not really a blockbuster, but you need those other kind of movies.
You absolutely do. You pretty much nailed the 3 that I'm most excited about, as well as Deadpool. There's just something that's so nostalgic about classic Wolverine showing up. They know how to nail nostalgia with the marketing of that.
Those are the movies I'm excited about, and my least interesting movie is Bad Boys 4, even though it was my 4th pick.
Go Bad Boys!
I haven't liked the Bad Boys since I haven't liked the Bad Boys. So if you want to answer our question of the week or tell us how our picks were stupid and what fools we were and why one of us is going to lose, or maybe we'll both lose. I don't know how that would happen, but, we both made picks that total could even make 100 million, so we have to forfeit the podcast. Who knows? But you can contact us at themoviebreakdown@gmail.com. You can also try Twitter at Movie Breakdown 1, and also we're over on Facebook. We'll say, hey there, facebook.com at The Movie Breakdown. Please follow us on those places, become subscribers to them. You can't really do that for a Gmail. You can't follow email, but you can follow Twitter or Facebook. I'm not called it X. As well, you can rate us and subscribe to us on Spreaker, Spotify, CastBox, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You listen to them, we're probably there. And if you subscribe and rate us, that actually helps us in the algorithms, and it will allow more people to know about us. And if more people know about us, then we grow our listeners, and then we can do more shows, and things will just be cherry pops. And another way you can help us out is listen to us on the Spreaker app. It actually helps it will increase sort of the ad revenue if you do it through the Spreaker app, and that'd be wonderful. And maybe one day this is a show that we could devote even more time to, because it's helping us out, and we can create more great stuff for you guys. And so that'd be fantastic. And another way you can help us out, or at least me, is check out Beyond the Balcony, which I admit I have not been a champion of posting. But as I said before, I am committed to getting back on track. I am confident I'll get back on track. I've already done my apology before we did the box office draft, so I'm not going to do it again. Just rewind it. Listen to it there, and you'll hear why and how bad I feel and how vulnerable I got. How can you be mad at me when I bare my soul like that? So, yeah, you can go onto Beyond the Balcony. I posted the Playful Foxes Society of Radio Theater presentation of Wuthering Heights, where both me and Everett provide our voices. We are voice actors in that. So you can listen to it over on the site. And then there's a whole bunch of other stuff that I posted eons ago, and you can read that stuff too.
And you can also do us the favor of joining us next week, as we've got a lot of fun stuff to talk about, or hopefully fun stuff. We will have the review for the Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt starring romantic stunt-filled comedy actioner. Not many films falling into that genre, and I love it. I'm
so excited for this movie.
Yeah, The Fall Guy. This could be just an absolute blast. It looks fun. As well, we have the Jerry Seinfeld and Melissa McCarthy starring comedy about Pop-Tarts in Unfrosted. So please do come back next week. We appreciate you for listening very, very much. I'm Scott Martin.
I just want to say I enjoyed Jerry Seinfeld. I love Melissa McCarthy, and I once loved Pop-Tarts. What could go wrong?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Yes, thank you so much for listening to us. You guys are great. And I'm Christopher Spicer.
Take care, everyone.
Have a great week at the movies.